Ever get that feeling like a pop song is stuck on repeat in your head? Like it just wormed its way in there and set up camp?
Oh yeah, we've all been there. Those earworms are sneaky.
Well, today we're going to unpack exactly how those catchy tunes are made. We're diving deep into the world of pop music production, and it's way more complex than most people realize.
It really is. It's this fascinating blend of science and pure creativity. And for this deep dive, we're looking at a video by Jaime Altozano. He teams up with the singer Ter to break down the whole process from the initial spark of a melody to that super polished final product.
Yeah, watching them work was a total revelation. I mean, I knew there was a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff going on, but seeing it step by step, whoa.
It really makes you appreciate all the layers, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And one thing that stood out to me was how much power the microphone actually has. It seems so basic, but it totally revolutionized music production.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, think about it. Before microphones, everything had to be recorded live, all at once. A whole orchestra jammed into a room, trying to nail it in one take.
Right, trying to stay perfectly in sync. That must have been chaotic.
And super limiting creatively. But with a microphone, suddenly you can isolate each instrument, each vocal track. It gives producers a crazy amount of control over the final sound.
Okay, so it's like having a jigsaw puzzle, but you can work on each piece individually before putting the whole picture together.
Perfect analogy.
Yeah.
And that's where mixing comes in. It's a whole art in itself.
Like what DJs do.
Similar idea, but it's happening in a studio. So the mixing engineer takes all those separate tracks, drums, bass, vocals, everything, and blends them together. Creates this smooth soundscape. It's not just volume, it's panning, EQ, special effects. They're basically sculpting the sound.
Wow. So it's not enough to just record a great performance. The real magic happens afterward.
Exactly. And this is especially true with vocals.
Right, because everyone's heard of auto-tune, but this video showed how it goes way beyond just fixing a note here and there. We're talking about manipulating vocals on this microscopic level.
Exactly. They can adjust the pitch, timing, even the shape of notes with insane precision. It's possible to create this flawless take from a recording that was, less than perfect.
So that effortless vocal performance I'm hearing on the radio, it might not be so effortless after all?
It's more common than you think. In the video, Jamie even shows us how he fixed some slightly off notes that Ter sang, but then he goes on to create notes that she didn't sing ATLL.
Wait, hold up. Are you saying that some of those crazy vocal runs in pop songs, they might not even exist in reality?
More often than you'd think.
Mm.
And it doesn't stop there. The video also dives into how producers create that massive, almost superhuman sound using layers and layers of background vocals.
Yeah, those harmonies always sound so full and rich. I never realized how much work went into creating them.
Oh, it's meticulous work. They're constantly editing, chopping, layering those vocal tracks to build that larger-than-life sound. It's like a virtual choir,
Yeah.
but even more precise and powerful.
It's wild. They're essentially crafting this ideal vocal performance, one that might not even be humanly possible.
That's a great way to put it. And that line between real and constructed is getting blurry with instruments too. There's this moment where Jaime shows how he can create a guitar part using a piano, note by note.
A guitar part on a piano. What sorcery is this?
Well, with digital audio workstations, producers can do pretty much anything to sounds. They can synthesize instruments, sample sounds, basically build tracks from scratch.
So that driving guitar riff I'm hearing, it might not even be a real guitar.
Could be a blend of samples, synthesized sounds, who knows what. And then there's the vocoder, which takes this sonic manipulation to another level.
Okay, I've heard the term, but not sure I really get what it does. Sounds kind of sci-fi.
Think of it as a way to fuse a human voice with electronic sounds. They actually demonstrate it in the video using a voice note from Don Quixote.
Don Quixote? Seriously?
Yep. They take this random voice note and run it through a vocoder, and it transforms into a synthesized melody. It's mind-blowing.
So they can take any sound, even a random voice message, and turn it into music.
Pretty much. It opens up some incredible creative possibilities. But, this whole thing about manipulating sound, creating these hyper-real experiences, it reminded me of something else. Butterflies.
Butterflies. How do butterflies fit into this?
It's a bit of a jump, I know, but stick with me. Amy talks about this concept called supernormal stimuli. And to illustrate it, he brings up this particular butterfly, the Argenis paphia.
Okay, I'm listening. What's so special about this butterfly?
Well, the males are actually more attracted to a rotating cylinder with certain colors and patterns than they are to real female butterflies.
Hold on, they'd rather mate with a spinning cylinder than the real deal? That's bizarre.
Right. And this is where the idea of supernormal stimuli comes in. It's like Certain exaggerated stimuli can hijack our natural preferences, even if they're totally artificial.
I'm not sure I get how this applies to us, though.
Think about it this way. We're hardwired to respond to certain cues, right? Bright colors, sweet tastes, things that signal safety or pleasure. But sometimes those cues can be amplified artificially to a point where they're even more appealing than the natural version.
Okay, starting to see where you're going with this, but how does it connect to pop music?
Well, think about all those production techniques we talked about. Those flawless vocals, perfectly balanced instruments, driving rhythms. Could it be that pop music, with its hyper-perfected sound, is kind of like that rotating cylinder? It's tapping into our desire for more perfect pitch, more vocal power, more sonic intensity than we'd ever find in nature.
Whoa, you're saying pop music is like that super stimulating, irresistible force for our
You
ears.
got it. And this isn't just about music either. This whole idea of digital manipulation blurring our sense of reality is everywhere.
You know what, you're right. Instagram filters, those perfectly edited YouTube videos, even how people present themselves on social media, it's getting harder to separate what's real from what's been tweaked and polished.
Exactly. It's a trend worth paying attention to. But before we go too far down that road, let's address the elephant in the room. The whole ethical debate about autotune and how much digital manipulation is too much in music.
Ah, yes, the big question. Is autotune cheating? Is it ruining music?
Well, the video actually makes a pretty convincing argument against that. They bring up some interesting analogies like orthodontics and a YouTube video by Tomska.
Okay, orthodontics and YouTube, gotta connect those dots for me.
Sure. Think about orthodontics. We're essentially manipulating the natural alignment of teeth to get a more aesthetically pleasing result.
Hmm,
But nobody calls that cheating, right?
it's seen as an improvement.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then there's this YouTube video by Tomska where he talks about how he had to record himself multiple times to force himself to cry because he knew a more emotionally expressive video would resonate better with his audience.
Interesting. So even in something that seems authentic, there's still a level of construction and, manipulation going on.
Totally. It's not really about real versus fake. It's about understanding the tools and techniques of modern communication. And in music, those tools increasingly involve digital manipulation.
So maybe instead of asking if it's cheating, we should be asking.
What do these tools allow us to express that we couldn't before? How are they changing the possibilities of music? And how do we, as listeners, interpret and appreciate music in this new landscape where the lines are getting blurrier and blurrier?
Those are some big questions. This whole deep dive into pop music production has opened up a Pandora's box of fascinating and maybe slightly unsettling questions.
It has, but it's definitely a conversation worth having.
Wow, my brain is definitely doing some heavy lifting after that. It's amazing to think about all the artistry and tech that goes into the music we hear every single day.
Right. It's mind-boggling. And speaking of things to ponder, there's one question we didn't really touch on in the video that I think is worth exploring.
Oh, hit me with it. I'm ready for another brain twist.
So we talked about how pop music might be this supernormal stimulus, right? Well, what happens as technology keeps getting more and more advanced? What does that mean for our musical tastes in the future?
That's a good one. Yeah, if we're getting used to this hyper-perfect, digitally enhanced sound, will we even be able to enjoy music that's more, organic?
That's the million-dollar question. And researchers are actually looking into that right now. There's some evidence that our brains do react differently to music that's been heavily processed.
Really? Like, how so?
Well, some studies have shown that when we listen to music with a lot of digital manipulation, it can trigger a stronger release of dopamine in the brain.
Dopamine. That's the feel-good chemical.
You got it. Pleasure, reward, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
So it's like our brains are getting this bigger hit from these super perfect sounds, which could explain why they're so addictive.
Makes sense. Like our brains are saying more, more, more of that sonic candy. But does that mean we'll lose our taste for, like, natural, unprocessed music? Will we get to a point where we can't even appreciate a simple acoustic guitar anymore?
It's the big unknown, right? Maybe our preferences are shifting, but maybe we could appreciate both. Like, just like we can enjoy a super edited photo and a candid snapshot, maybe we'll still be able to enjoy the raw energy of a live performance, A&D, this sonic perfection of a studio recording.
I hope so. I mean, there's just something special about that rawness and imperfection of live music, The human element, you can feel the energy of the musicians, the connection with the audience. That's impossible to capture in a studio.
Absolutely. There's a magic to live performance, that spontaneity and connection that you just can't get from a digital recording. But we should also acknowledge the incredible artistry and skill that goes into those polished studio recordings.
For sure. It's a whole other kind of art form, one that takes serious technical skill and creativity. It makes me wonder, though, where does it go from here? If we keep pushing this digital manipulation further and further, what does that mean for the future of music?
Oh, the crystal ball question. That's a tough one. Will it get to a point where everything is so perfectly produced that it all starts to sound the same? Will we be craving even more extreme forms of manipulation? Or will there be like a backlash, a return to a more organic, unprocessed sound?
I could see it going any of those ways. I mean, music has always been about this back and forth between pushing boundaries and respecting tradition. But one thing that's definitely happening is that the lines between musician and producer, performer, and technician are getting blurrier and blurrier.
You're right. And that blurring of roles brings up a whole other set of questions about authorship and authenticity. If so much of the final product is shaped by technology and production techniques, who gets the credit? Who's the real artist?
It's not as simple as it used to be. And it feels like we, as listeners, need to be aware of these techniques, these secrets of pop music production, so we can be more informed and engage with music in a more critical way.
Absolutely. It's not about judging or dismissing any kind of music. It's about understanding how it's created. It's about appreciating the artistry, the skill, the intention behind the sounds we hear.
So, big question here. Should we be worried about this trend towards hyper-perfection in music? Are our brains being, like, hijacked by these supernormal stimuli?
Important questions, no easy answers. But the fact that we're even talking about it's a good thing. We need to be aware of how technology is shaping music and how music is shaping us.
We need to be conscious consumers, engaging with music thoughtfully, not just letting it wash over us.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe by understanding the techniques and motivations behind pop music, we can actually develop an even deeper appreciation for it with all its complexities and contradictions.
I love that. It's not about rejecting tech or holding on to some idea of pure music. It's about expanding our definition of what music can be.
Well said. I think it might be time to wrap up this deep dive into the world of pop music production.
Already, feels like we've only just scratched the surface.
I know, right? There's so much more to explore, but hopefully this was enlightening.
It totally was.
Yeah.
It's definitely changed how I listen to pop music. I'm noticing things I never did before and thinking about it in a whole new way.
And for anyone who wants to go even deeper, we highly recommend checking out Jaime Altozano's YouTube channel. He's got tons of amazing videos that break down music theory and production in a way that's super fun and easy to understand.
He's a great resource no matter what kind of music you're into. So until next time, keep those ears open and keep exploring the amazing world of sound. Man, I'm still processing all that. It's kind of wild to realize how much artistry and tech goes into making the music we hear every day.
It is, isn't it? And before we wrap things up, there's one last question that popped into my head, something the video didn't really touch on.
Oh, okay, I'm all ears.
So we've been talking about pop music as a supernormal stimulus. But what if that trend continues, as tech keeps evolving? What happens to our musical tastes in the future? Like, what if we get so used to this hyper-perfected, digitally enhanced sound that we lose our ability to enjoy music that's more, raw and organic?
Yeah, I see what you mean. Will we reach a point where our brains just crave more and more intensity, more
Mhm.
sonic fireworks, and we lose touch with the subtleties of music?
It's a real possibility, right? But then again, our brains are pretty good at adapting. Maybe we'll develop new ways of listening and appreciating. Maybe those imperfections, those human moments in music will become even more precious because of that.
Like we'll evolve new musical taste buds.
Exactly. Maybe it'll be like, how some people were really into vinyl records these days, even though they're not as technically perfect as digital music?
Yeah, I get that. There's something about that warmth and imperfection that's really appealing.
Exactly. So maybe as technology keeps advancing, we'll see a parallel movement toward a more organic, human-centered approach to music.
Or maybe we'll figure out a way to appreciate both. The digitally enhanced stuff, A&D, the raw organic stuff, each having its own unique appeal.
Now, that would be the ideal scenario, wouldn't it? Just expanding our definition of music instead of getting stuck in one way of thinking about it.
I love that idea. So to all our listeners out there, that's something to ponder. What does the future of music hold? Will tech take us even deeper down this rabbit hole of hyper-perfection? Or will we find a way to balance innovation with that human element, that raw expression?
That's the question, isn't it? Keep those ears open and those minds curious. And as always, keep the music playing.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. Until next time, happy listening.